welcome to Your Mind Matters. I'm Dr. Mike Ellison. I'm a psychologist with over 30 years of experience, and I'm a professor of counseling. And so I'm here to talk with you today about a topic that we very frequently don't hear much about, which is the topic of grief and how it feels to feel a sense of loss. Maybe this is something that you've had and lost, like the life of a loved one. Or maybe it's something that you've never quite attained and you realize that that option is no longer available for you and you've lost that opportunity. There's all sorts of loss in our world, and very frequently there's a sense of grief that comes with that. So I want to remind you all that this is not psychotherapy. This is for educational purposes, and for those of you who find after viewing this video that you might need to talk to someone, remember that clergy and psychotherapists are available in your neighborhood with just a call. Probably the beginning of the science of grief and loss started in the late 1960s with a Dr. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, who was a physician who treated patients with cancer. And she noticed that the patients went through several different stages of the grief process. The first was the sense of shock and denial. This can't be about me. You've got the wrong records. I feel fine. All of those things that say, this is too powerful for me to deal with. I can't take it. I'm going to deny this reality. Sometimes then people become very angry. Although this model by Kubler-Ross is not sequential in the sense that one follows the other, it's also seemingly true that many grieving persons follow all of these different stages, some one right after the other in a matter of moments. So one of the common reactions to grief and loss is anger. Not only shock and denial, but anger that this is happening. It's unfair. We begin perhaps to do the next idea of grief, which is to bargain. Maybe we bargain with God or with other people or with the doctors who are treating us. Then at some point we notice that patients become depressed. They can't sleep, they can't eat, they don't take care of themselves. All the signal symptoms of depression seem to occur. And occasionally there is a sense of acceptance that this is what's going to happen and I've got to accept it in some sense. I've got to find peace with it. Many times persons who are working through an old term from psychotherapy from years ago, meaning they're thinking about and feeling the different feelings that come with grief and loss. Our biology of the brain, our so-called neurobiology, is designed to keep us alive, to keep us surviving. And so that part of our brain, which if you have studied, you may know as the limbic system, is a part of the brain that says survival is paramount. That's our number one goal. And when that system is activated, frequently our intelligence and our decision-making ability and the experience that we've gained in life so far is shut off for a little while. And we are really just reacting to the news, or in this case, maybe the bad news. So as we now prepare for the holiday season, many people are finding themselves somewhat depressed. We used to call this the holiday blues. Maybe you have experienced this yourself or someone that you know. It's a time when the expectations of love and family are gathering together are sorrowfully not happening. Or maybe our dysfunctional family was one where trauma and violence occurred, and all of the cultural myths of togetherness and warmth and family may signal this is a time when people were hurting other people, and maybe you were one of those that was hurt. This sort of grief and loss is very troublesome and upsetting to some, and if you don't know that this is true for yourself or for other people, you may not realize that you need to mention this and talk to somebody. Who to talk to, of course, depends upon so many different things. We won't, many of us, ever have that perfect family. And so coming to grips with how that dysfunctional family that we grew up in has affected us and affected maybe the family that we are a part of now, or the way that we are raising a family, are all very important concerns. The research shows, for example, that if we don't fix our family problems, we tend to pass them along to the next generation. So if this is one of your issues, or if you know someone with these issues, urge them to get help, because we don't want to pass this along. We want to fix it. We want to heal it, and we can. This is a very unusual time in the history of our planet. The COVID-19 virus has infected literally tens of millions of people around the world. A high percentage of those people have already died, with the expectation that before the vaccines come, which may save us, that many more may pass. So for many persons, there's denial about this whole idea that there's such a virus that exists that can hurt us. And we see these individuals keeping this denial present until the very last moment of their breath of life. You've probably seen news accounts where people say, I can't believe this is going to hurt me or kill me, as the last thing they say to frontline responders like doctors or nurses. Here we see that power of the denial phase of grief and loss at its most powerful. And yet there are many other parts of grief that COVID brings to us. Our culture in the United States is one where we deny grief of death. We don't like to talk about death. We think it's morbid, it's frightening. The limbic system of our brain triggers a stress response. Our heart may pound, we may get sweaty palms, we may breathe a little faster. We can't think as clearly as before. Many of us are frightened of death, and we don't like to talk about it. And yet that's the very thing that will take the power from this fear, is to talk about it, to discuss grief and loss and what happens when people that we love are no longer with us. So for us, COVID has brought us to the place where now we have to talk about death and dying, and to do so we realize that sadness is normal. Our culture doesn't deal with sadness and depression and death very well. We're supposed to keep a happy face. But if we have the courage to understand that our sadness is normal here, that we can restore ourselves by being involved in our normal daily routines, going eventually back to work, taking care of our families as best we can, and understanding that the motions that we go through in daily life doesn't mean that our emotions aren't hurt. But we can find some relief in taking those little small steps every day to return to what we think of as a new normal. Lastly, just a reminder that for all of our modern technology, we still have the brain of a caveman that was put in there many, many years ago. And so our brain really can't think about our own death, our own dying, our own mortality, because that hurts our survival. We don't react like a caveman would to ensure survival, to fight and to win. But our body wants to do that. It wants to fight this, and we have a hard time dealing with this conflict. So I wish you the very best in your struggles, if you have them, for your grief and loss experience. And if you can, remember that your mind really matters. So please do take care. This is Dr. Mike Ellison. Thank you. See you next time.